Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax so we can chat about what is happening up in the stars above for the weekend. Yay, it's Friday or Friday. And it's been a beautiful kind of couple of days here. Maybe, high 50s, low 60s, sunny, makes you just want to get out and do, the gardening and get stuff done, right? I hope all of you are having a great week. As we come to the end of the week, we have a very highly activated weekend. And, that's nothing new, right? We've had these activations going on for quite the while. And what's different this weekend is that we're in the new moon phase of all of this, or at least as we get to Sunday, we are in the new moon. And that kind of puts a different spin on all of these different things that have been going on, including the fixed grand cross that we talked about on Monday. And that is still activated this entire week, even through the new moon. And also a new pattern that I'm going to tell you about today called a wedge pattern. A wedge. It's very similar to let's say maybe it's similar to a trine, but it doesn't act the same way as a trine. And I'm going to show you a very graphic version of that, as that's also activated in our new moon on Sunday. And it happens to be between some very important planets, with Uranus as the release point, and we'll talk more about what all of that means. And the combination of Venus, Saturn, and the North Node all sitting in Pisces, and then the South Node activated in that pattern as well over there in Virgo. So, as I show you the graphics this morning, you'll understand what I mean when I say it's pretty visual and it's very activated. Um, as we begin this morning's broadcast, though, I'm going back to the moon, right? The moon, today, Friday, there's no big aspects that I can tell you about, except what I noticed was the moon in Aries, newly in Aries. It moved there at 3 o'clock or so this morning, my time, and or maybe that's EDT. I'm not sure. Let's see. What am I on? I'm on EDT. So it was midnight my time, 3 a.m. ish for those of you on the East Coast. And as she moves into Aries, of course, she takes on a completely different persona, because the moon is usually soft and intuitive and emotional and a little more contained. And in Aries, she loses all of that, right? She gets flamboyant, or she gets confrontational, she gets active oriented. And as this is the lead in to the weekend's primary energies of Mars opposing Pluto, activating, of course, the grand fixed or the fixed grand cross, and um, the new moon, which is also activated the cross. Today's moon then is actually like the opening salvo, if you will, in what will be a very activated weekend. It's like the fire stirs beneath the surface, right? There's something fiery underneath the surface here. The moon is lighting the match. And Neptune involved in all of this is also whispering the dream, and Mars begins to rise that energy from from beneath to the surface. And today we kind of feel the rumble of this energy, and tomorrow we meet the roar, right? The roar of the Mars opposing Pluto grand fixed cross. So let's talk about this Aries moon as the emotional lead in to all of the things that will be occurring over the weekend. But first, let me say good morning to people who are checking in. Good morning to Julie. She says, good morning, Janet and Astro Design Tribe. Diana Schneider, good morning to you. And JLo, happy Friday. I hope you had a happy birthday this week. And Jacqueline Tyler, good morning. We haven't seen you in a while. She says, I have a new email. So I guess that's a personal message. So I'll answer that later for you, Jacqueline. So let's dive into this moon, because the moon to me is very interesting in all of this. Of course, she's the lead in for the weekend, but she's also involved in the new moon, which is on Sunday. So it's a moon day, right? Even though it's not Monday. So the Aries moon is actually this emotional lead in to everything that comes up over the weekend. This is a moon that isn't subtle, right? In Aries, she's never subtle. And she moves through a series of important aspects today that sort of act as a bridge between the inner stirrings within us, right? The inner anxieties, perhaps, or the inner idea machine that's moving. And then tomorrow's outer world confrontation energy. So she's beginning the process for us with the inner look. And the first aspect of the day is she came into a conjunction with Neptune, right? Neptune newly in the sign of Aries, and Neptune being the planet of spirituality, of deception, of disillusionment, of blurred lines, and emotions blur here with imagination, with intuition or illusion. It's a very nebulous, hard to pin down kind of energy. And that's funny. I just remembered a dream I had this morning before I woke up. For some reason, Terry and I were moving to Canada. Canada's not that far from me, really. It's just, maybe a half an hour, 45-minute drive. And then we were moving to what I thought was a town that's just over the border called White Rock. But as I was looking at the map, it looked to be further north. And there were these people that were sponsoring us to move to Canada. Only I was suspicious of them, right? In my dream, I kept going back to Canada to talk with these people because there was just something not quite right. And then suddenly Terry woke me up because I'd overslept the alarm and boom, now I don't know. Did I move to Canada? Uh, Emotions, right? So in my thought process here in sharing that dream with the moon conjunct Neptune from early in this morning, is this idea of these blurred ideals and ideals that we are holding, right? The idea that things aren't not going well in this country and should I move to another country, right? That's always kind of in our minds. Like people are, jumping ship from the United States and moving to all of these other places. And in my mind was my husband has a lot of family in Canada, and why not, right? Except I don't wanna leave the US, and I don't really wanna leave my kids and my other family members here. But you can see how the dream state will sometimes mirror some of the anxieties and the things that are happening in your outer life. And again, when the moon is coming into contact with Neptune, all of those things can kind of rise to the surface for us. And as well, we may feel inspired. We may feel tired. We might feel spiritually open or even a bit lost. So there's a wide variety of things that we can be feeling in this energy. And this is where the emotional fog begins, especially when the moon connects with Neptune. We sense something's coming, but we can't yet name it. And that was another feeling I had this morning, the butterflies in my tummy, like something good or something unexpected was about to happen. And that is also driven by the moon coming into contact with Neptune. So we can ask ourselves, what dream or ideal is quietly motivating us today? And what is it? Can we name it? Or is there a tag that we can put on it that says, this is what I've been dreaming of? Because that's kind of the question that we are first presented with this morning as the moon conjuncted Neptune. But then the moon goes on to trine Mars in Leo. And I would say that's about where we are at this moment. Now the emotions get direction and maybe even courage and action or desire to push forward with our dreams or with the things that we desire. This trine gives us a quick hit of motivation or assertiveness, right? To take that next step. It's fiery, it's confident, and it can help us clarify the intentions prior to this new moon, right? New moon's all about intentions. So today, maybe getting those intentions a little bit squared away in your head and maybe even getting them written down. Um, and it helps us to clarify what's rising up from the moon connection to Neptune. What is that? And how can we utilize that energy? And our inner warrior seems to be warming up before tomorrow's Mars opposition Pluto. And you'll remember, I often say this, that the aspects that, yes, they are exact on a given day at a given time, but we're always kind of feeling them coming in. And then we have the exact, and then we also have it as it wanes. So it's not just one day, it's a pattern of maybe coming and going, right? And that inner warrior warming up then to the idea of what is it that I'm going to transform in my life? Because ultimately, that's what the Mars opposition Pluto will mean for us tomorrow. And then the moon will sextile Pluto. Okay, right? The moon, she's hitting every spot that's going to get activated over the weekend itself. So now we have emotional depth and intensity. Pluto adds that intensity, and it all comes online with us in this hint of what the transformational energies will be for us in the weekend. What is it that we're going to lay claim to as we want to transform our lives through intentions that come with that new moon? But we also have this pressure that we might be feeling in our bodies, or a sense that you're being asked to look deeper below the surface somehow, to, take that, step to look under. And it might mean that it's a beautiful time for you to drop into emotional shadow work or energetic clearing and clear what's festering before it explodes outward at someone else or in the most inopportune time, because that's how it works, right? It never comes at the perfect time, although we could argue it was the perfect time. But emotional explosions are what it is that we're trying to evolve away from, right? We want to become more conscious of our emotions. And then lastly, today, the moon will conjunct Mercury, also in Aries, and here's where our feelings and our words collide, and they can become fast or sharp or assertive or passionate or, very excited and excitable. And there's a desire to speak our truths, to say what we really mean. But if we pause before we react, then we can be bold and we can be truth telling and we can avoid emotional impulsivity, right? We always talk about this idea of response where you're triggered by something. Someone says, someone does, and you stop before you respond back, saying something that might be biting or it might be hurtful. And, you say, let's breathe through this, and then I get a choice, right? I get to choose whether I'm going to respond at all or how I'm going to respond and maybe mitigate some of the emotional conflict that could come up. So it's a great time for us to tell our truth, but also to be careful about how it is that we go about doing that with others. We don't want to hurt other people's feelings. It would be a great time later in the day today as the moon comes into conjunction with Mercury to journal or to use voice memos to remind yourself of certain things, or, gain some download energy from spirit or from your higher self that may actually give you some clarity about what's transforming tomorrow with Mars Pluto's confrontation, right? And then there's also an astro design or human design tie-in here. Because remember, the sun is at the gate 27 this week, the gate of accountability, but it's also called the gate of nurturing or nourishing in some of the more traditional human design verbiage. And the gate 28 is on the spleen center. That is where the earth is. And it's called the gate of challenge or sometimes the gate of adventure. So, this Aries moon is likely a call to emotional responsibility before taking bold, purposeful action. It's like the little bit of stop energy for you, right? That is this nourishing? Is this something that's responsive, responsible of me to get involved with? So, here's a great question for you to think about as we move through today's energy of the Aries moon. What do you need to feel or clear or claim emotionally today so that you can show up in integrity tomorrow, right? Shall I say that again? Let's do it again. What do you need to feel, clear, or claim emotionally today so that you can show up in integrity tomorrow? And remember, integrity is about being true to yourself. It isn't about a moralistic something that somebody is telling you to do or compelling you to do or be. It's you being true to you, being in your own skin, right? Being in integrity or being integrous. All right. Questions. Let's see. More people showing up this morning. Good morning to Lo, who says she had a peaceful birthday with her favorite foods. I love that. Jolie Evans. Good morning. Terry. Good morning. Amanda. When was the last time Pluto was in opposition to Pluto? Oh, geez. I'd have to go to an ephemeris for that. Let me make a note to myself to see if I can research that for you, Amanda. Pluto opposing Pluto. And I'll get back to you with that one. Nicole Markham, good morning to you. And Peggy Ann Mulcahy, good morning. Christine Buckingham, hello. And Terry says, give us a like and please subscribe and share. Thanks for the reminder, honey. So if you are on Facebook, give us the like button or hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, the thumbs up button. And then please share with your friends and your networks of people. It's so appreciated. All right, let's go on now to Mars in Leo in the opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. And that will happen on Saturday's energy, so April 26th. And this is a cosmic confrontation of will and power. It's major, it's big. On the outer world, it shows up as power struggles between people or between factions of people or groups of people, right? And is in opposition, so it's often very contentious energy. Um, Mars wants to act and it wants to, it wants its way, right? It's like, Trump signing all of his executive orders. But then the Pluto part, the transformational part, the empowering part is the courts that want to slow that down, right? They put up the blocks or the stops to those actions. And so we are seeing that happening in the outer world. Pluto wants to evolve, and in opposition, we're faced with the tension then between ego, Mars, and transformation, Pluto. And it is this personal fire, Mars energy. I want, I desire. This is how I want it to be versus the collective force, which is in Aquarius, which is with one voice, which is heart led courage, which is the cold call to soul growth, right? The cold call, meaning this is let's step back, let's be a little more dispassionate. So, Pluto and Aquarius trying to have us be more circumspect, I suppose I could use that word, in what it is that we take action on, while Mars, the warrior energy in the sign of fire, is wanting to just burn it all down or move it forward or take all of the action. So it really is this, opposition, a true opposition, are forces moving in opposite directions, right? Like tug of war. Okay. So Mars in Leo is in its highest the bold leader, and it's expressive, it's creative, it's very assertive, and it wants recognition. Leo, right? Leo energy wants recognition. It brings a desire to take action from the heart. It's the energy of wanting to lead boldly into the future, and it wants to stand in the spotlight, which comes from a purely egoic place. But unchecked, this can become the reactive ego, the defensiveness, the drama when it gets challenged, right? Just watch some of the fireworks that happen out there when Trump's executive orders get questioned by the courts, right? I mean, that's just a simple one way to look at it. Think about it in your own life when you assert your own forward momentum, and the people around you who are being impacted by that decision balk at it, right? That's the power struggle between Mars and Pluto. Now, Pluto in Aquarius is the disruptive transformer. It says, we are here to evolve and we're going to do it, right? No prisoners. You're going to evolve. It exposes where systems, where egos or individual actions are out of sync with evolution or out of alignment with the greater whole. And it brings this collective pressure to change, whether we like it or not. right? It's like the change that you never knew you wanted and never really wanted, but here it is, right? And for us here in the USA and around the world, I see it happening too. There's a lot of change, a lot of transforming that's going on, whether we really wanted it or not, right? Or whether it's the right revolution or evolution or not. So the opposition itself creates this clash between our personal will and soul evolution. And when I say soul, it could be the individual soul, but it's also the collective soul, right? The collective soul of all the humans here on the planet. And it is also a test of how you use your power, your voice, and your energy to control or to defend or to elevate, right? Am I hoping to elevate or am I trying to control everybody and everything? And so the potential for power struggles, especially in our leaders and in our relationships, is very high. There's the potential for repressed anger surfacing, right? The reaction to all of this change, right? The reaction to all of the transformation energy. And that can bring sudden confrontations and old ego patterns being triggered. Here's another example of what this energy is doing. Yesterday's kind of unexpected response by Russia in Ukraine, right? The bombing, the drone attacks and so forth that, killed at last count I heard 9 people, but it's possibly much more than that at this point. Right? Reactive energy and those old ego patterns that get triggered and that we are sometimes seemingly powerless to respond to, and instead we react, right? Cooler heads need to learn to prevail. So, how do we work with this energy? How do we work with that Mars opposing Pluto energy? Well, first of all, this is a call to conscious action. All of this is. Do you not see that? Right? Everything that's happening in our outer world, all the change energy that's going on in our personal lives is really all about learning to respond versus react. And you don't need to suppress, not I'm not saying suppress your fire, but you do need to direct it. Right? This is voluminous energy. Where do you want to put it? Do you want to put it towards something that is building something for the future or that is positive? Or do you, out of reaction, just throw it out into a much more negative expression? So ask yourself questions like, is my action aligned with purpose or ego? Purpose, ego. Am I acting from power or fear of losing power? And what would authentic, heart led leadership look like right now? What would that look like for you personally? But also, as we dream the future here in the US or any other country in this planet, the planet in general, the earth, what would heart led leadership look like? If we cannot dream it, we'll never create it. If we can dream it, then we can create it. So that is this. So this is a sacred inner alchemy, I guess you could say, right? This alchemy that's going on. This energy may feel very explosive, but at its highest, it's liberating. And the old self is dying to the empowered self, right? So the empowered self can rise, the old unempowered or disempowered self must die. And if you're feeling confrontation rising in your life or within your relationships, pause, pause, and then breathe. Respond with consciousness, not reactivity, right? It's real easy to blow up, but that damages our relationships. It damages our hearts. So response means that I take a moment, I take in. And it doesn't mean that what you've done to me is correct or right. It just means I don't have to react in that same, ugly energy. I can stop and I can pause and I can say, that wasn't a very nice comment. I'm going to leave or I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to respond to that. Your choice, right? And of course, there is an astro design or human design connection here with the gate 28, which is called the gate of challenge. And it's activated and it's alive here in this Mars opposing Pluto because Mars is stirring the instinct to fight or to to survive, that survival instinct of the spleen center, which is where gate 28 lies. And Pluto says, evolve or keep repeating the same thing, right? If you're noticing in your lives right now that there are repeating patterns that are showing up, then it's an invitation from Pluto to evolve beyond that pattern and stop the train of Mars reactivity that you have been doing or using for maybe all of your life, right? It's time to stop that. And then, of course, the gate 27, where the sun is, the gate of accountability, reminds us that only action that's rooted in care, truth, and courage can lead to real growth, right? And that's what we're trying to reach for. That's the attainment piece, right? Is becoming accountable for our own nourishing energy, how we take care of ourselves and others, but also how we express the truth and how we lead through our own energies. All right. Anybody have questions about this? Because this is a lot. This is big, and it's also a whole part of the fixed grand cross that we talked about on Monday. I'm breaking it down into pieces right now because this is maybe the most important piece of it all. Paulette Peasley, good morning. I meant to write, when was Pluto last opposite Mars? That one I can look up easier. And Londa, good morning. Londa, I have a solution to our inability, or my phone's inability, to carry a conversation for more than 5 minutes. And I'll share that with you later. Okay, so no questions. If you have other questions, Amanda, I will get you the answer to that because it couldn't have been all that long ago. I don't have the 2024 ephemeris, but I'll get it. Now let's look at how Mars opposing Pluto ties into the fixed grand cross. So I'm actually going to share my screen right now. And what you're going to see here is let me see if I can make this bigger for myself even. Haha. So I've outlined here the Grand Cross, and it's in orange. So you see here's Mars in Leo, which I forgot to name, but there it is, Mars in Leo. And over here is the new moon. And that is the sun conjunct the moon, which is actually for Sunday, but this just for illustrative purposes. And then we have down here Pluto in Aquarius. And then we have over here the black moon Lilith, and she is in Scorpio, and it forms this grand cross. And it's a cross because the oppositions, right? Mars is opposing Pluto. And at the same time, the new moon will be opposing black moon Lilith. Right. So it's a very stable energy, and yet it's also very confrontational types of energy. So think about Pluto over here in Aquarius, and it's opposing Mars in Leo. If you want to look at your own chart, look for the sign of Leo that looks like this, and the sign of Aquarius, which are the waves that look like this. And this is where that opposition is taking place in your own chart. All right. And it could be, any configuration. In my own chart, Leo's in the second house, and that puts Pluto in the eighth house. And in some people's charts, you might have a Leo rising sign. Londa, I think you're one that has a Leo rising sign. So this is going to take place across your first and your seventh house, the house of you and the house of other, or your relationships. Some of you might have Leo in your 10th house, and it's going to happen across the 10th and the fourth axis. So you all have it happening somewhere personalized to you based on your own chart. And if you need your own chart, all you have to do is go to my website and request one, and I can get that for you. Here's a hint though, if you're already on my mailing list, don't do it that way. Just email me privately to get another copy, because otherwise it keeps trying to add you to the mailing list, and then you end up getting 2 and 3 emails from me on the same day with the same title because you're on 3 lists. Okay. So personally, if you are not on the mailing list, and if you're new to the show and new to Living Astrology, then you can go to my website and request your chart. And it comes with a report, and you can get that for free. And also then you have it when we do the shows, so you can see what yours looks like. All right. So this Mars Pluto opposition isn't just happening in isolation. That's the whole point of me showing this to you, right? It's happening in the context of some very interesting energies. And it's kind of this build up into the culmination of Sunday's new moon. And the new moon will be in Taurus right up here, which is anchoring one of those corners. So we have Mars and Leo now. That's fire, personal will, heart centered action when it's operating in its highest. Otherwise, it can be egoic centered action rather than heart centered action. We have Pluto in Aquarius over here at this end, and this is air. This is collective transformation energy and the disruption of old systems. And we're seeing that every day, right? Every new presidential executive order changes something in the old system. And I dare say this is happening in the economy. This is happening in the political system. This is happening in the education system, on and on and on. The old systems, the disruption of these old systems is Pluto in Aquarius energy. And now the sun and moon in Taurus. This is Earth, and this is about our values and how we embody this energy and how we find stability and maybe even security. It is also economic. Taurus rules the banking system and the economy. And then we have the black moon Lilith down here. She's in water. And this is the shadow feminine energy, the repressed feminine energy, where you only need to get permission from yourself to rise out of the old shadow energy of the black moon Lilith. And here we have a reclamation of such of the emotional power that you have, right? So Mars opposing Pluto right here. This is the activating axis. But Lilith and the sun and Earth, or sun and moon, excuse me, in the new moon creates sort of this completion to the cross, if you will, creating a high pressure situation, a four-way pull, if you will, of the energy of your psyche, right? The energy. Mars and Pluto, the pressure to act or perform, and the sun and Lilith, the pressure to reclaim your values and your truth, especially any part that's been repressed or denied aspects of the self, right? This is where you take a stand and be your true self. So, together, this fixed cross that we have been talking about um, says you can't keep doing things the old way. You must act from your soul's truth, not ego or fear. So it's really asking this question of us to how do we jump out of those old patterns? How do we short circuit, if you will, even the at the level of your DNA where survival instinct is very strong? Right? I can't believe there is this, I can't believe this is accidental that we have this fixed grand cross appearing. At the same time, we have the earth moving through all the gates of fear in your human design, right? The spleen, the center of survival, of where fear, the gates can double as fear or paralysis points, right? So this is asking us to do something new, to break out of the old and do it along the lines of your soul's truth, not what you've been taught to believe or conditioned to believe is true for you. So the question then becomes how do we channel how do we channel all of this Mars Pluto power without combusting, without blowing our lives up or blowing ourselves up or blowing the world up, right? So in this, the biggest gift you can give to yourself in managing this energy is to recognize the trigger before it becomes a reaction, right? Pluto is slower than Mars, deeper than Mars. Mars is fast and fiery. The key is to pause between the pressure, Mars pressuring you to respond or react, and the actual response. So notice the trigger. If you know that you always get triggered by a certain person or by a certain subject or anything like that, then you know that if you haven't yet taken care of that trigger, if you haven't yet healed that, then the possibility is you're going to have this trigger point. So that is the first step. Notice the trigger. The second step is to transmute. Don't suppress. Now, I don't want you swallowing down that anger or that upset, that reaction. You don't need to be chill about it. You need to move energy consciously, right? So, do an embodied practice, breath work. Maybe you need to excuse yourself from the group or from that situation so you can do some walking meditation, or maybe dance your way out of the group. Do something that breaks up the energy that you've been feeling. Maybe it's a fierce journaling moment or a creative expressive moment where you put it to good use. Maybe you have to name the fear, and maybe you have to name the power dynamic out loud to yourself, right? This is the old me reacting to the trigger of abandonment, or you feel guilt or shame or whatever it is that's the trigger. And then, lead with purpose here. Mars wants to lead, and Pluto asks why. Lead because it serves the greater whole, not because you need to prove that you're right or that you're worthy, right? That's the wrong way to lead. And let the ego burn so the soul can rise, because this is a phoenix moment. Remember the whole theme this year, if you were listening to the astrology of 2025 way back in December, we talked about a new word introduced into the vernacular, and that word was phoenixing. All of 2025 is about phoenixing, the rise of the phoenix moments, right? You won't combust if you let go of what isn't true. It's not true, right? You're conditioned to believe it's true, but it's not, right? You are not here to fight for power. You're here to become it, embodied, conscious, and heart led. That's what you're here for. All right. Now, any questions? How do I get out of this? Exit full screen, then I can see questions. Diana, thank you so much for looking that up for me. Amanda says Mars is in my fourth, Pluto in the 10th. So this is across your home work balance, right? So let's see, Mars is in your fourth. So Mars action maybe is trying to orient you more toward home, toward the foundation, your roots. What makes you feel stable? What makes you feel secure? While Pluto is transforming that through your worldly self, if you will, or the career and profession you've chosen, how you show up, right? That's what that opposition is about for you, Miss Amanda. And thank you, Diana, for looking that up for me. All right, so let's go to the new moon. And I'm going to keep the chart up here because the new moon chart has this other pattern in it that I want to talk about. And here's the theme for this new moon in Taurus. It's about building new foundations in the fire of truth, right? In the fire of truth. And this new moon opens up a powerful portal for embodiment, intention, and deep emotional sort of reclaiming of your own power. But with its position in early Taurus, it also is activating all four corners of that grand fixed cross and creating massive, maybe potentially, inner tension and the potential for evolutionary breakthroughs for you, for all of us, for us collectively, but also as individuals. So here are the core aspects of the new moon. And this is a sun and moon conjunction in Taurus at 7 degrees 47 minutes. That new moon occurs. Where's the chart? Where did I put you? That new moon occurs at 3:32 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, and that will be 12:32 p.m. for those of us on the West Coast. And in the universal time, it will be 1932, which is what, 5, 6, 7:32 p.m. for those of you, say, like in Western Europe. All right. Now, as we look at the sun and the moon combination here, this is the heart of the lunation, right? The new moon is when the sun and the moon come together in a conjunction, and it's about stability and grounding and values, very Taurian concepts. But there's no soft soil here, right? This is rich volcanic ground, and it's ready for new seeds, but only if the old roots are dug up, right? You got to get the old stuff up and out so that you can have good soil to plant the new seeds. And Taurus themes are about the body, about self worth, security, nature, resources like money, but also peace and persistence. And it asks the question, what are you ready to build? But only if it truly supports your values and peace in your life and brings you peace in your life. Now, interestingly enough, I looked this up in the Dane Rudyard book, the Astrological Mandala, and I'm gonna read it to you. But remember, he wrote this book many moons ago, so the language is a bit stilted. But I think it brings us to the whole point of this new moon as we get to the end. So here's the phase. It's Taurus, 8 degrees, a sleigh on land uncovered by snow. And the keynote, the value of anticipating and preparing for expectable conditions. And he says, here we have a combination of two factors: the sleigh, which is a product of traditional skill, and the ability man has to foresee and thus to prepare for a future situation. This ability relates this symbol to the one previous to it, where it says a woman from Samaria had the capacity to receive a revelation of the future state of human evolution, though in a different and subconscious sense. People or man should be ready to use past knowledge and skill to meet the demands of a stage yet to come. So, in other words, we're building upon our knowledge and our experience in order to support the growth of the future. And at this third stage of this sequence, we should realize the value of future oriented imagination, but also of relying upon the natural order of unfoldment of all life's processes. So, in other words, change happens over time, or transformation happens over time. Yet we also have to be able to imagine the future. That's what this new moon says, right? Can you imagine what the world will look like? Can you imagine what your business would look like? Can you imagine what your relationship, your money situation, your health would look like? Because if you can't create it. But if you can, then it's possible because the imagination lies in the fifth dimension, right? Where all of the information is, right? So you have access to it. And if you it's like if you build it, they will come kind of thing, right? If you can imagine it and start the process of creation, then you will get it, right? You will be able to create it. So there's that part of the of this moon. Then we have the fixed grand cross part of it, which is what we've talked about quite a bit. And here we have the square to Mars in Leo, the new moon right here, squaring Mars in Leo. I'll make it bigger for myself. And then the square can feel like you want to launch forward, but that there's a weight or resistance, something that you have to settle first before you can actually take action. And this may cause some emotional reactivity or frustration if you feel blocked or you feel unseen. So the question then becomes for you at this new moon, where are you trying to push a vision before it's aligned with your values? Right? Because all of this is a taking some time to envision. And you have plenty of time because the new moon isn't until Sunday. So start the envisioning process now. What what are the blocks that you're perceiving to getting where you want to go or being who you want to be? And then what can you envision as a way to remove that block, to bring it peace, right? Then there's the square of the new moon to Pluto over here in Aquarius. And Pluto says you must change, but change is happening in collective identity futuristic visions and systems, right? So this is you're part of a you're part of a bigger picture of change that's happening. So this aspect can surface for you during the new moon as fear of losing control, mm, resistance to letting go of your old roles or your old ideas of yourself, and power struggles or breakthroughs around truth and alignment. So, what systems, either internal systems or external systems, need to be deconstructed for your values to take root in the real world? What do I have to get out of my way, right? What do I need to get out of my way? And then there's the opposition, right? The new moon is in opposition to black moon Lilith, and this is kind of the sacred undercurrent of everything. This is the emotional key that kind of unlocks the depth of this moon. And Lilith is in Scorpio, a sign of water, intense water, right? And it holds the truth that we've repressed. And this is all caught up in the black moon Lilith's or in Lilith's uh, mythology, right? The repressed feminine, the feminine energy that refuses to be controlled and then gets labeled wild or gets thrown out of the Garden of Eden because she doesn't conform, right? So Lilith in Scorpio holds rage, perhaps the rage we have at ourselves, at others, at our situation, at the world at large. Rejection. Where have you felt not accepted by your peers, by your family, by yourself? And there's sexual and emotional power in the Black Moon Lilith here. And there's instinctual knowing. Remember, Scorpio, very instinctual, very powerful in the knowing. And the new moon opposing then the Black Moon Lilith down here demands that you stop abandoning parts of yourself to keep the peace. Not necessary. So, what truth, what emotion or power have you buried to stay safe or acceptable? And this is the time to reclaim it. This is the new moon of all new moons for you to reclaim your power, to reclaim your leadership, to reclaim yourself, right? Your desires. And there, of course, is a tie in for all of this to the human design. In fact, the new moon is sitting at the gate 27, which is about care that's rooted in truth. Don't over nurture what drains you, right? That's the balance we need to find to nurture those things that nourish us and to nurture others in a way that doesn't drain ourselves, right? Keeping that balanced. And then, of course, with the earth over here, you could say the earth is actually conjunct the black moon Lilith. Then we're facing the challenge of living on purpose or living with purpose, not just surviving. No, no, no. We're here to thrive. We're here to bring mass consciousness to the forefront. And this new moon then aligns with with the message, choose what matters, even if it's hard. Even if it's hard, choose what really matters. So the new moon in Taurus invites you to build, but first you must clear the rubble, face the pressure, and reclaim the lost parts of yourself. Align your values with your power, your body with your truth, and your life with your soul's design. That's this new moon. All right. Now, in the last 10 minutes here, let's talk about this other pattern that I've got here. This is called a wedge pattern. A wedge is a configuration where an opposition, in this case, Venus, Saturn, North Node, all sitting right at about the 26-degree mark, opposing the South Node, right? The axis is the North Node to the South Node, and it is sextiling a third planet, in this case, Uranus, and then Uranus is also in a trine to the South Node. So it creates a triangle, kind of a T square looking triangle, but it's a tension point that has built in solutions. right? The built-in solution up here at Uranus. So a wedge pattern creates tension, but also offers a path forward. In this case, the pressure between the past and the future, Virgo, Pisces, the nodes, right across there. And it finds a release point through the planet Uranus. If something breaks open or surprises you, don't panic, right? Something's in this pattern that can likely break open either your heart or something in your life so that you can move forward. It's a forward momentum that we get from here. So instead of clinging to the details or drowning in the unknown, look for liberating insight. Look what for that aha moment, that lightning bolt, right? Uranus will show you the exit strategy, and that's what a wedge is, a very powerful change agent or an aid, if you will, to the change that needs to take place. All right. Then we also have Jupiter up here in Gemini in a trine to Pallas Athena. And she's in Aquarius. She's just not close enough. She's not close enough to be in a conjunction to Pluto. But Pallas Athena is a brilliant strategist. And she has expansive mental connection here in the sign of Aquarius. And Jupiter is all about growth and evolution and expansion of your wisdom and of your belief systems. And Pallas also reminds us of patterns and strategy, higher intelligence. There's a whole lot going on with Pallas Athena. And in air signs, this trine brings mental clarity. So we have this, other helper in this new moon. If we're going to have to change, and apparently we do, we have a brilliant strategist on our side, and we have a configuration in the wedge that is capable of bringing us breakthrough energy, or bringing us the right thoughts, the right ideas in the right timing. And then it asks us to reframe what it is that we've thought. What is it that we've always thought? And how do we reframe it in order to move forward? So now let's go back to our little wedge here. It's not so little, but it's a wedge. And here's the Pisces cluster, right? We have Saturn and Venus and the North Node very close together still. We did talk about this about a week ago, I think it was. And they're in opposition over here to the South Node. And Uranus is what's forming the trine to the South Node and the sextile to the Pisces group. So we have a tug of war in some ways going on between in an opposition. It's a tug of war between mythical surrender up here in Pisces and practical precision in Virgo. And the challenge is letting go of the need to figure it all out and lean into spiritual trust, to surrender, or maybe to soul led direction, something coming up from deeper within, right? Your intuitive self. And Uranus at the release point is the disruptor. He's innovation. He's sudden clarity, like I said, that aha moment, and liberation from the past. He helps us let go of the chains that bind, of the albatross, say, around our necks. And in Taurus, Uranus wants us to break out of the outdated values or routines that block us from embodying freedom, true freedom, right? So Uranus becomes the key here. You don't have to control or fix it all. All you have to do is just be willing to shift when the opportunity arises, right? That's the key in this whole new moon is when the opportunity arises, be willing to shift, be willing to change, be willing to release all of those old dialogues, those things that you've used to hold yourself down or hold yourself back. And the other day, I was thinking about the nature of the work that I do, right? It's very astrological, but my true heart is, well, astrology still, but When I can help you to transform something in your life, a core wound, a situation that's blocking you, a blocking pattern, when I can break you out of not getting what you truly desire and break you into getting what you want. And I've been long looking for something, a system, a practice that I can take you all that way, right? Take you all the way through the transformation. Astrology and all of the tools that I have that are of an astrological point of view show us what is or what's potential or what could be. But it doesn't necessarily show from the soul's point of view what it is that needs changing or where it is that you're truly stuck. What's the pattern? So then enter in soul realignment, right? I brought that tool in because that gets me into your past lives or even what's going on in this present life that's broken down, that's kept you from being who you truly want to be, breaking out of those patterns. But even still, in that, did I really see people change their lives in response to that soul realignment? Well, sure, maybe somewhat superficially for some people, but now I have a new tool, taking that soul alignment into clearing and integration. And that's what is so super exciting for me because now I'm going to have a tool to take you all the way from the knowledge of what was going on in previous lifetimes, where the blocks and the patterns have arisen from, all the way through the clearing process and then integrating the new into your lives now. So I'm so excited to be able to bring that in. It'll take some time still. I'm going to have to test it out. So if I call upon you, if you've had a soul realignment before, it takes about an hour and a half to get that information to you. Um, the clearing and integration may add another couple of hours to that. So this is more a process that will be together for, a good chunk of a day in order to move you through that process. But I'm really excited about that, and we'll be sharing more information about that as we go. The second thing I'm really excited about is I am resurrecting the membership that I let go of a few years back and bringing in some new energies into this. I have some very high powered stuff that I need to teach you guys, but I also, inside the context of a membership, I can bring these things to you without having always to charge an extra price for that, right? You're paying a monthly fee. That monthly fee at this point for the first 6 months of the people that join will be $22 a month. After that, if you join after that, then it goes to $33 a month. So there's kind of an incentive to join early so that you get the lower price. And that will launch with the new moon next month. However, I will allow people to join ahead of time, and I'll be sending out information through email on that very shortly. So that's something new. And here's a couple of the ideas of courses that I have that will only be offered, only, at least in the beginning, to the membership. And one of them is about the ideological wars that are occurring right now. The Jupiter and Gemini, followed by Uranus and Gemini, and how is that changing our thoughts, changing our truth, right? Changing what we think of as truth. And the second big, longer course that this will be is we're going to be sitting down and having tea with the planets individually and as a group and relate that to their mythology, to that archetype, and to how that plays out in your natal astrology or in your transiting astrology. And that will be, of course, over time, right? Because we'll sit down, I've already written the sun. We sat down with tea with the sun yesterday and asked the pilot to take me on a trip through the mythology, through the pictures, the archetypal energy. And we'll be doing that with all the planets. And then I'm going to take the inner planets and have a collective conversation. I'm going to take the outer planets and have a collective conversation. And here's the most exciting part. I'm getting chills even thinking about it. I'm going to take the asteroids or the dwarf planets. So now we're talking Ceres, we're talking Sedna, we're talking Pallas Athena. We're all of those other pieces that we don't get to talk about very often, and we'll have tea with them as well, and see how that plays out. I do want to pull a card, and I'm pulling a galactic heritage card apparently for us. Um, for this weekend. I think we need to think outside of our earthly box, right? So we're going into the galactic box today. And this is interesting. I've never had this card. It's card number 29, which is an 11, so brings us some form of enlightenment. And it is an insectoid system, a parallel system called Hive Mind. Wow. Okay. And remember, these are a little bit longer, so stick with me here if you want to hear this whole thing. Um, Insectoid hive mind. There are many extraterrestrial insectoid species that have contacted Earth for thousands of years. They are peaceful and have a harmonious society that is based on the idea of a group thinking as one. Most humans shun the idea of a loss of individuality, but it can also be a freeing experience whereby the ego no longer dominates one's reality. Since all consciousness is ultimately one anyway, insectoid beings reflect this truth. You have connected with these beings in the past, and their energy is now asking you to remember the oneness that lies underneath the illusion of separation. So here's the commentary. This is a very archetypal card that has less to do with specific ET species and more to do with our relationship to the universe. One of the greatest human fears is of losing individuality. Yet, in order to evolve and survive as a species, we will need to embrace group consciousness in a constructive and harmonious way. There are numerous species in creation, insectoid and other, whose societies are based on a hive mind or a community oriented structure. To some degree, even the Zeta Reticuli species has this consciousness, and the power of the whole has been what has ultimately saved their species from extinction. On Earth now, our individuality and attachment to our ego's opinions are destroying us. This card asks us to look at how we can relinquish this habitual need to cling to individuality in favor of embracing a more collective, universal outlook. We can start at the community level and move outward to the planetary one. The truth is that we are all connected, no matter how far apart we feel. Denying this only prolongs the inevitable shift needed to move to the next level of our evolution. This card can be interpreted with this in mind, but it could also mean that you personally have a connection to an insectoid or hive mind species, and this connection can help you bring those needed changes in awareness to your life and to the planet. Whoa. I knew that was going to be a powerful card. Insectoid, hive mind, card 29 and 11, enlightenment. Think on that one. All right, and by the way, this was the Galactic Heritage cards by Lissa Royal Holt, and it is a very interesting deck. All right, that is it for me this morning. You guys have a great weekend. I hope you can move through the minefield with peace and joy and non reactivity. I'll see you on Monday. Bye for now.